welcome to this week's edition of CED Office Hour Live, where our community and economic development team engages the community, connects you to resources in a conversation format. And um, today's subject will be the second part in the series of the intersection of community development, art, and social justice. And we're focusing our conversation on the Alandes Powell, who's been very engaged throughout our community on in the corporate sector, social justice sector, nonprofit capacity building, and just general, just community reinvestment kind of activities for years. So thank you for joining us. But before we get started, as always, I'd like to introduce our team members who are here. So we'll start with you, Eric, this week, and then Ambrose, and then we'll turn it back over to me.
Yeah, hi everyone. Great to be here. Eric Smith. What am I now? Program Extension Associate, Community Economic Development. So work out of the Toledo region, Greater Toledo region, and support community economic development work primarily in Northwest Ohio, but I'm available throughout the state. Thanks.
Ambrose.
Good afternoon. Ambrose Moses, CED Extension Educator, and just territory statewide, and just working with individuals and groups in the formation of their entities and the development of their various projects, and open and willing to help anyone I can.
And then I'm Amber Twitty, and also working with Ambrose and Eric on a community economic development team at Central State University in the Extension Department. And I'm based in Cincinnati, Ohio. My primary region runs from Hamilton and Butler County, which is the western border, southwest border of Ohio, over to the southeast border, which is the greater Portsmouth area, which is Lawrence and Scioto counties, and Adams, and all the counties in between. But as Eric and Ambrose stated, we do joint stuff statewide, and this is one of the joint projects that we get to do. And just glad to have you here. So thank you, Cincinnati Ray, aka Richard Smith, Don Jackson from the city of Cincinnati for joining us, Alexis for joining us, who I believe is one of the artists that we'll be speaking with shortly, and James Keys. James Keys is also based in the same region as me, but he's on the Family and Consumer Sciences team. So if you'd like to introduce yourself and kind of what you focus on, feel free to do so.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Hey, so my name is James Keys, and I am an FCS educator for the Southern Ohio region and interim program assistant for FCS. My primary goal is to connect with clients and members and community members as to a health and wellness standpoint, and provide programming to help people live the healthiest life as possible. So we deal from cooking to exercise to nutrition to setting goals, just all across the board to kind of help people live the best life possible. So thank you, Amber.
Thank you. So like I said, our subject today is the intersection of community development, art, and social justice. And we're focusing our conversation on a newer organization, even though Alandes is not new in this space, but out of necessity and passion, she started Black Art Speak. But before I turn it over to her, I always like to give a baseline definition of community and economic development. Because like diversity, you can ask 10 different people and get 10 different answers. So for our purposes, community and economic development looks at how we live, work, play, and thrive and navigate through all of those spaces, right? And so one end of the spectrum is the infrastructure. So that's public housing, that's affordable housing, that's building of public spaces, parks, just construction of office buildings, highways, that physical kind of things that make our communities what they are. The other end of the spectrum is the people development, right? Our human capital. So that's workforce development, whether that be youth, veterans, non-traditional population, like people aging out of the foster care system, and people who don't maybe have any challenges, but they're just trying to improve themselves professionally or personally, or increasing or improving their self on the self-sufficiency spectrum. And then organizations, as all of us are represent today, are the businesses and organizations and institutions that help connect those two ends, the physical and the people, and make everything kind of go around, right? So that is community and economic development, commonly known as CED. So three kind of mid-sized words, but it's very powerful and impactful. And so as CED professionals, and really everybody on this call really is a CED professional, right? Um, we look at the whole system, and say, hey, this whole spectrum, and based on our expertise, where can we plug and play and make a difference, whether it's process improvement, connecting to resources, or just revitalizing the area, so technically we're all CED professionals, right? And so that's kind of the baseline of our foundation for our CED work. And today, like I said, we're focusing on art. And one of the things about art is probably one, like music, is one of the things that's kind of universal language, no matter where you are. It has impact, it drives conversations. It's a safe space for people to express how they feel. And pieces can be developed, which is that creative placemaking that drives conversations about different issues. And that's the intersection with social justice as well. And 5 different people can look at art and have different interpretations based on their backgrounds, experiences, wants, needs, and things like that. So without further ado, I'm going to give Alandes a really high level, because she's one of my she-rolls. I could talk about her all day, all the good things that she does. And I've seen her fight in front of the camera and behind the camera, behind the scenes, right? And navigating and making opportunities for people. And she started out, like I said, in the corporate sector, did a lot of process improvement in that sector, retired from the first corporation, then got hired by a bank to continue a lot of that work, but be more community focused, right? And then she has also volunteered on numerous boards over the years, taking leadership roles in the community and through those boards to drive, especially around diversity, equity, and inclusion, to drive change, to drive accountability from all sectors. And she's probably one of the few people in Cincinnati, like when you're in politics, you're on one party or another, you might get a sprinkling of support from the other parties, under the scenes, but she's one of the few people who can leverage folks across the board. And so, and does so consistently, right? And is unapologetic about it. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you with the driving. Just start out with, just telling us a little bit more detail or highlights of your background, and what kind of your journey to even start Black Art Speak. And then I'll have some questions after you do that.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I can do all these great things, and I cannot seem to make this computer work. So can you guys see me now? It looks like it pops on as soon as I talk, so you can hear me and everything. I've been having a little bit of a challenge. And I don't even know why it looks like it has me like really large and everything. I don't know. I'm not really good with this computer stuff. Before I get started though, and thank you for that introduction, it means a lot. And I look at you and all the great things you do, Amber. You've always answered my call when I needed you, so I appreciate that. I see that Annie Ruth is on the call. Annie, you out there? I thought I saw her.
Yes, I'm out here. I wasn't sure if you guys wanted me to cut my camera off or not.
Oh, yes.
No, your camera on. So before I get started with me, I just wanted to talk really quickly and introduce Annie Ruth, who's an internationally known artists. And then Ruth, I don't know if you want to tell them anything. I could go on about you forever, but if you just want to give them the short version of who you are, I think that'd be great before we start talking.
Yeah, because she's the auntie of Cincinnati. Okay, go ahead.
That's right.
Thank you. I have been doing this 40 plus years. A lot of what I do intersects arts, education, and the performance side of it. I think one of the great things too is it's the blessing to be able to represent grassroots organizations as well as museums internationally. So, you know, I partner with probably most of the mainstream organizations and have served really as a mentor, bringing other up and coming artists into the fold to really help people get a little bit more professional about their work and see some of the endless possibilities of partnerships and intersections that go to so many different areas. I love doing what I do. And there's always an educational side of it. And I love that, you know, connecting with Alandes has brought me more into the social justice aspects and really using the art to be really tackle some of those topics that people find it hard to find the words for, but art helps to build the bridges. So I think that's in a nutshell. I love doing what I'm doing and glad to be partnering with Alandes and working with Black Art Speaks.
Yeah, and then I think I saw Alexis. Alexis actually supports our day-to-day. She actually keeps us moving. And Alexis, I don't know if you had anything to say, but I wanted to make sure I shout out the fact that you're joining us as well. You know, go ahead, Alexis.
Oh, I was just going to say hello, everyone.
So you know how you have someone who makes sure everyone's fed, everything we need, they have. She makes sure we have supply, everything. She just goes the extra mile to make sure we get it done. I will tell you, when it comes to art and social justice, I am more comfortable with social justice than I am art. But I found art as a medium to actually calm the voices so that we can truly have courageous conversations about social justice or about social issues. And I found that when it comes to art, because everyone looks at it differently, the first thing they do is look with their eyes, whether it's ballet, whether it's visual art. But the first thing you do is either look or listen. You're normally not talking unless we're talking about poetry or rap, but there's a lot of looking and listening to even get to that part. So what I felt art could do at the height of what we were going through with George Floyd, et cetera, was to make people shut up and listen, in all honesty. And I found a way to do that through art, through the mural that sits downtown. And it actually was just, I say, a spiritual moment. I am a Christian, and it was really a spiritual moment, and how it happened almost overnight. These people who are now part of my family, I didn't know 3 years ago. I didn't know before we actually had a conversation on a Sunday, and I asked them if they would join me in doing the Black Lives Matter mural. But what Amber does know about me is when I decide something that I'm going to do, I just do it. And so that's one thing I'll say about anyone listening to the call or anyone thinking about this, is that every moment we have the ability to do something great and make memorable. Most times we just need to go do it, not ask, figure it out, and then just make it happen if you really believe in something. And a lot of times, I know we're about to get to Black History Month, and I tell people all the time, we make history every day. We make history just from being. What we don't do well is communicate the history that we make. So after we did the mural, the second stage was to make sure everyone knew what happened. And so that second year, we wrote a book. I'll call it a history book, even though you look at it, it is full of beautiful photos. And it takes you through the journey we went through so that that information could be cataloged, if you will, and people could read about it. No matter what happens to the mural downtown, now we'll always have that. I think the third thing I'll say just about this journey is that pulling everyone together so quickly required a lot of trust. And people had to trust what I was saying, and I had to trust that they could deliver it. And we had never met each other. Our first time meeting was going to be down at the mural to actually get to painting. Everything else was done from phone calls and emails, text messages, and it was done over Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and then Sunday at 3:00, Monday, Tuesday, and then at Wednesday at 4 is the first time we met. And all of a sudden I thought, how will we know? And so I had to text everyone and say, everyone wear a red shirt, so that we knew who was a part of it because it was so many people there. But I think everyone that's a part of our original Black Art Speaks, they had to do a lot of trusting. They had to take off work. Some people's families wasn't okay with what they were doing. There was a lot of soul searching that had to happen for them to say yes. And then I had to say no to people because the first group they had brought to me was predominantly white artists. And I had to tell someone who was going to put up a lot of money to help us make it, is that I needed their money. I needed them to join us, but white artists could not lead what we were doing, that it had to be us, representing us in the designing of the letter, but we wanted the community to help us paint. So I think kind of that gives you a start of where we are, but understanding social justice has always been my cause, whether it was in corporate rooms, in the boardroom, through the Urban League, through other avenues. I've been doing that since I was like maybe 12, 13 years old. I've been an advocate for us. I just found that a great way to do it is through art, which brings me to where I am today.
I wanted to chime in on and kind of back up a little bit of bring you a different insight to what Alandes was sharing. Because in the arts world, the engine, she's so right that trust was a huge factor. What I've seen though, it was in the time to where economics was a factor too. And the engine that she started began to roll before anyone could kind of stop it and throw it into a business as usual pile. And that's what really drew me most about that. What is the authenticity of it, the organicness, of the whole situation, and to see people from all walks of life. So even though it was Black led, it was opened up to the entire community, and I think we really saw diversity and inclusion at its best, operating organically.
No, I agree, Annie. I agree. I threw out a number to the artists on Sunday and I said, you guys, I'm gonna pay you for what you're doing. I know people have to call off work. And I can remember one of the artists, everyone took my number and one of the artists sent me a note and said, hey, I told my employer that I was sick for the week because I didn't want to get fired, because I need to be off. And I just thought you should know. I don't know if you have another idea. I said, yeah, if I was you, I would call them and tell them you're not sick because they're going to see you on TV. It's like TV. I'm like, yes, this is so some artists didn't even know the history they were making. And I remember him thinking, oh my God, am I going to get fired? I said, just call and give him the truth. He kept his job, thank goodness. But everyone, it was just like we were almost flying by the seat of our pants to make it happen. The only thing I knew is that I was asking the right people from a city standpoint to help make this happen, and then it came down to just raising the money. Amber, I can't hear you.
Well, if I take myself off mute, you'll be able to hear me. One of the things that came up in the chat is from Eric, and he wanted to know, is the book available to read? And I said yes, but can you talk about how that book was made and how you've leveraged the book, the momentum, and sponsorship to turn that into a fundraiser?
Yeah, let me take one step back. Is when we talk.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you see it.
Okay. Oh,
I had it.
Yeah, it's dark, so you can't see it. You're right. The book is online. I mean, the book is on our website at blackartspeaks.com. You can go in and order it, and we normally ship it out within 24 hours. The book itself, I'll go back just a slight. When we were on the phone on Sunday, I think it was Monday when I came back and said, hey, you guys, we have to have a name for our collective. I didn't know we needed to do that. Let's start thinking of a name. And we all kept throwing out things. And I can't remember exactly who. It might have been Brandon. We all, somehow we came up with Black Art Speaks. So
I
that's
think it was Brandon.
yeah, that's the name of our organization. It's called Black Art Speaks. And it turned into, we started it as a LLC. It is now a nonprofit. It is membership based. We started with 17 people. We're now up north of 100. We actually just had the Cincinnati ballet team, all of the Black Cincinnati ballet dancers join as they want to figure out how to use their voice in a social justice capacity. We joined forces with a couple of NFL players from the Bengals, one who had just been released, and we helped him actually use his voice when it comes to workshops in the schools. We were blessed to see that professional athletes, they actually capture the attention of these kids that we've been trying to talk to. So we've been working with him and got something rolled out that's really going great. And I know that I'm spinning into all the other things, but I want to make sure we understand that Black Art Speaks now is kind of who we are. And it's open to everyone to come and join. We have volunteers. It's not just visual arts, it's really about creatives in that space, every genre. Thinking about the book, I've always been like, I've loved history. I've traveled the world, thank God, because of the jobs I was in. And one thing I realized is that when it comes to Black history, not only was it told for us incorrectly, but we never stopped to write it down ourselves. One of the most dangerous things that could ever happen was for someone to learn to read, which is why they tried to keep that away from Black people. As that snowballed, I think a lot of times we're so busy doing, we never stop to document. Sometimes documenting makes people think that you're being a little too proud or trying to show your stuff off. You know how people say, just get in the room and do. But I always feel like you can't actually lead and teach and grow unless you document. So we had this idea to do that, but having an idea and making it happen was two different things. And there was someone one day who called me and she said, hey, I would love to document the story. And I said, oh my goodness, that's exactly what we wanted to do. And she said, well, I want to offer up my skills to come help do it. And so she actually, her name is Danielle, and Danielle actually stepped in. It's Danielle Lewis Jones. I'm sorry, I had to think about that. She stepped up and said, let me help. And then we went and we captured a guy, his name is Stephen Smith, and he became our designer. And then one of my really good friends, and yours as well, Amber, is Shonda Monroe Smith. She raised her hand and said, I don't know if I've done it before, but I'll help you edit the book. And all of this was so timely that people said yes to do it, because little did I know that in the midst of doing all of this, I was going to have a stroke. And it was pretty major. And we were right at the end of getting this book done. And Shonda came in and the team, and they understood the vision and said, we're not going to let it fail. And so it was really a team effort to bring this book to life. And we had a number of sponsors that came and helped us sponsor the book. And so with that, the book is done. And so that was our second big thing that we did as a group. But we all agreed that being individual artists was okay. Having your own business was okay. What we wanted to do was find a way that when we came together, it was really about social justice. And when we were apart, you felt stronger because you were a part of a collective. But quickly, I recognized the economic piece and what it was lacking. And I decided that I was going to help artists make money. And so that's what else we do, because I think I went and I found out how much these artists was getting paid, and it upset me to the core. And I thought about how in corporate America, you have a lot of regulations that allow you to kind of do the right thing, or at least look like you're doing the right thing. When it comes to arts and culture, it's about what we like. You cannot regulate what a person likes. You can't regulate who decides to give to the ballet versus who decides to give to something else. And what we recognize, or what I recognized quickly, is that all the money out there was only 1 to 2% getting to Black artists. And I just wanted to change that. And so that's what we've been doing. We help artists find jobs. We help them find the business acumen to do right when they get a job. We have people like Annie Root, who's helping teach them what they need to do, how to show up and show out. And then we go and we find different collaborative moments that we can pull everyone together and do additional projects. So we've done a lot over the last 3 years, I think, and we have a lot more that's coming.
And I can honestly say it was truly an experience to be part of Shonda's team and do the content editing. And just, I think we spent more time on top of the editing. We were going back through the stories, because in the book, it not only says, you know, why this artist, what they were interpreting for that particular letter, and why, down to the colors, what they were trying to convey, but you also learn more about each individual artist and their journeys. And another thing that I would like to say just about the project itself was how you leverage in the business side, we call this public-private partnerships, P3s, right? And it's where you're leveraging both the public and private sector to get something done that be for the general public use, right? And you leverage that to the hilt, right? And down to having people sponsor the food. And by the way, the food was good. It wasn't, you know, that 99-cent burger. It was real food, right? And kept them fed. And it was 100 degrees outside. And then you were dealing with COVID kind of things. So you had all these different dynamics. But everybody was supportive, and then you had to refresh, right? Because the difference with this mural was actually painted on the street right in front of City Hall, right? And this is a high traffic area, so it was vandalized, so we had to redo it. Then it was just worn from all the traffic, the daily traffic. So the city even kicked in and said, hey, we're going to add a coating over it to help sustain it longer. So not only was this is not intended to be a one and done, or, you know, this is just going to be up for a couple months. This has been institutionalized in a good way for the city of Cincinnati and all those who come to visit. So I wanted to say that. And then another thing on the business side is, like you said, the disparity in payment. And you had to go out and make a case for the artists to get paid fair, equitable wages for their work. And then they had teams of volunteers, you had materials, supplies, all these things. So it was a lot of different moving parts, and they knocked it out in 2 weeks, right? Despite all these different dynamics. And so even though you made it sound really kind of easy, I just want to put that out there. No, it was a whole lot of stuff going on, a lot of coordination on many fronts. Danielle said she was going to try to, I did reach out to her. She was going to try to pop in, but she had a scheduling conflict. So I don't know if she's going to make it. But she did an excellent job, too, with helping to promote it and keeping it in the limelight. Because, you know, things like this, it'll be the talk of the hour. But we're going on 2 years and it's still being the talk of the hour, right? So this is a sustainable model that you all put together, not only for the artists, but for the community as a whole. And so from that, you also do creative, you have social justice events. And so can you talk about that and kind of what you format and some of the subject matters? And a lot of these artists that were in the Black Lives Matter mural are participants in these events that you have periodically.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, we are going into year 4, actually.
Yeah.
So we are going into year 4, and I do agree that the city has really been a great partner in continuing to help us raise our voice and allow the art to stand in the street. Something that's happening that the public doesn't know yet. We're actually going to be doing a PR release here soon, but we are going to have a historical marker that is actually going to be installed in about 3 weeks. And there'll be a whole press release where no matter what happens on the ground, there'll be a historical marker. It's 2 sides. On the first side, it shows the original, and then it actually talks about all of the artists, etc. On the other side, it talks about the poem, each letter, and the artist. So I'm excited that that'll be installed here in a couple of weeks. So that'll live on, long past me. And then the street, we have a commitment to continue to refresh that. So we continue to refresh it. We found new coding every year. The next coding is supposed to be better than the last coding. We were asked to put it on buildings, and I never said no to that. I just said it can't be instead of. So it needs to stay in front of City Hall to remind the people who walk in there what we need, and to remind us that we need to vote for the people in there. So that needs to stay. But thinking about putting it somewhere else is always an option. It just always felt like they wanted to do that and then take it off the street. And I haven't been okay with taking it off the street. So that's coming up. We have a number of things. Annie Ruth, I'm gonna stop and let you talk about some of the stuff we have coming.
Okay. Yeah, I am really excited. When you talk about longevity and maybe the reimagining of what has happened with the Black Lives Matter mural, is that a lot of people know this. Many people are still being educated that there is the poem. Each letter in the Black Lives Matter mural has a theme, and so and of course a color. But simply the poem that Alandes wrote, "We want what you want," and it kind of lists education and safety. And I'm really partial to the letter R, because the theme of the letter R is we want the world to see Black men not as thugs and criminals, but as loving husbands and fathers and men that impact the world. And so with the infusing into the neighborhood comes the standing of a 3D letter, which probably will be about, I believe, about 8 to 10 feet high. Roselawn is actually one of the neighborhoods that's going to, I believe it's Roselawn and Avondale, but since I live in Roselawn and we're taking the lead on that, it's going to be one of the neighborhoods that's going to stand that letter R from the Black Lives Matter mural and actually promote and prompt more community engagement. It will stand at the corner of Section and Reading, in a very prominent place of the business district. And then ironically, there's a new Black-owned restaurant owned by a Black male that it will just kind of offset each other and highlight. But the great thing about it is the community is excited about this. Is something that they can make their own and can engage with, as well as it becoming a public art and a piece of beauty and reflection. So we are really so excited about that happening, and that Roselawn being one of the first neighborhoods to experience that, and particularly with the theme and the the mindset of them saying, just the community saying, this is something that we're a part of, even to the point that, hey, can you infuse our community name somewhere in this letter? So that's just awesome. When you talk about Black Art Speaks being a collective that benefits everyone as a whole, I can honestly say that in my endeavor to help Roselawn do a mural, you probably will notice that there was a mural on the corner of Summit and Reading Road where the old Ponderosa used to be. That is truly a community connectivity piece. And it was actually thrust forward through the help of this awesome collective called Black Art Speaks. The community, Girl Scouts, police officers. There were even people who were on probation with their ankle bracelets out there painting on that wall. And if you notice, there's no defacing of that wall. The image looks just as beautiful as it did 2 years ago when it was placed there, because everyone's saying this represents us. This is our collective voice. And I think that's what's going to happen with all of the letters as we begin to move out into the varying neighborhoods to stand up 3D letters in other neighborhoods as well.
So I will tell you what Annie Ruth is talking about in standing the letters. I just kept envisioning that an aerial view saying Black Lives Matter, that you're really not thinking about how people politicize that statement, but instead what they're going to see is all these letters that represent the poem that represents what we truly want as a community. So in Avondale, it will focus on gun violence. And the fact that we're able to put programming with it, so we're not just standing up the letter, we actually have been having conversations about mental health, about gun violence, about the bias of Black men. We've had a lot. So it's not just the letter. It is really doing the work. It is making sure people understand that we too are human beings. We too feel. We also need, and that we want to actually allow you to see our hearts as we together try to change this place. And it might sound a little bit like cliche-ish or maybe poetic, what I'm saying, but I mean it with my heart and soul. And what we found is that art has the ability to not just heal, but to empower. So what we want our kids to do is feel empowered to make great decisions. So this is not just beautiful art that's going to go around, and it's pretty expensive, to be quite honest. We are thankful to some really great sponsors. We have Fifth Third, who's helping us with the A in Avondale, United Way, who came big time right when I thought maybe I should give up on this. They came and said, no, we're going to help you. We're going to help you this time, and next year. So some really good sponsors who said they want to help make this happen. So I can't wait to stand up the first one, hopefully in April. It'll be stood up in Roselawn with the fast coming of the A. And Shonda Monroe from UC's Urban Impact Studio, without her, she stopped and said, I'm going to help you stand up these letters. And she has really held us accountable to making dates and making it happen. So shout out to UC and Urban Impact Studio for being a part of that journey with us as well.
So one of the things, and I'm always going to tie it back to the business development side, is one, you formed we spent a lot of time on our team talking about forming your organization to fit the mission, right? And when you register it, whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, if it's a benefits corp, right? You have to be clear on your mission and the direction you want to go in. So you've done that. You recognize, as the entrepreneur-minded person that you are, that you're not the subject matter expertise in the whole thing, right? But you recognize that. You put your ego aside and say, hey, Amber, Shonda, I need y'all to do this. Danielle, can you do that? Great. Then you went here, you went there, and it all came together, right? We had to tell you to sit down because, like you said, you had a stroke. We want to make sure you're around like you are today, right? And personally, if you go on her social media sites and just listen to her journey, it's amazing, and it's a blessing for you to even be able to speak today, right? And where everybody can understand you, right? And still have that beautiful smile. You never give up no matter what the challenges are. But that tenacity translates into your nonprofit as well. Because like you said, you like Nike, you just do it. I'm not trying to hear no. If you say no or maybe, that means I'm going to come back to you. I got to go over here, and then I'm going to come back to you. So it's rare that somebody can really tell you no. They might say not now, but they can't tell you no. Because you make a business case, right? It's not just a moral obligation. It's not just a cultural obligation. It's personal, it's professional, but it's also business, right? And a lot of times when you're dealing with things, especially with culture or things that you may be personally passionate about, or as morals, but you got to go to these corporations. You got to have a business case, right? Because if they didn't have that experience, that executive might be like, that's not important. I'm not going to spend my money there. So I like to say that you recognize all that. And this one, let people know in the chat. I posted some of the pictures from the original making of it. So Annie Ruth, I found one with you. You're the last picture. You sitting on the ground doing your letter. But just to give people a sense of all the people who were involved in all ages, right? It wasn't just these well-established artists. All of them were very talented, but they're all different levels in the journey. There were some that were homeless, but they were dedicated to coming to this and having their mark and doing a letter. And they were dealing with all kind of personal adversities as well. So um, I just applaud you for creating that safe space for the creators to create, right? That's a blessing and testament to the work that you all do. We have like about 15 more minutes, so I'd like to turn it over to Ambrose and Eric to see if you have any other questions, and we'll start off with James Keys, who has his hand raised.
Hey, good afternoon. Thank you. This has been very engaging. And as I look from a family consumer science, and I work a lot with maybe the aging population, when you look at art, has art been known or to help with like mental health or stress or coping mechanisms? So how could I relate art to help those that may be struggling with mental health or stress?
I'm going to answer it and then I'm going to turn it over to Annie Ruth, but I will tell you art is therapeutic. There's a lot of factual information that tells you about it, but I'll tell you something that I experienced is we have a graffiti artist, and I decided that graffiti feels a little less scary to try to do because I can't draw stick me, and honestly, when they let me paint, it's like all one color and I can't mess it up. They're very careful with not letting me mess things up, but he uses graffiti in layers. And what we were doing recently is asking some kids and adults questions and allowed them to use the graffiti thinking to layer it. And so the first layer are things you know about yourself that you don't want other people to know. And then then you go to the next layer and you're asking questions. We've used it to do vision boards. There's just so much. But I will tell you, art is absolutely therapeutic in doing it. But in seeing it, I can tell you that personally, I have spent days in the Louvre, just like in tears at all of that. And what is missing, everyone knows, is true Black artists. And so when you get a Black artist in the room that's using art to be therapeutic, and you walk out the room with this amazing piece, it changes us. So I know I'm focused a little bit more on Black artists and Black art, but I will tell you, we are not seen but about 20% in everything that goes on. And I just want to make sure people know that when our kids see us doing things, they actually know they can do it. Annie Ruth, let me turn it over to you because you've done it personally.
Yeah, the great thing, I'm glad you brought that to the forefront as far as the therapy. There is a big area in the world, matter of fact, arts and healing, arts and health. And it crosses over to all of the arts forms. I've been blessed to be able to use the art form to work with veterans at VA, using the visual art and the writing to help them process some of the trauma and to find their voice. I'll never forget that there was one veteran who came to a class that I facilitated, and he used to come with his head down, hanging down, and you would have thought that there were some cognitive deficiencies, but it wasn't. But the art actually awakened something in him to the point to where he began to write. As we began to write and express, and I always would share that every single being on this earth is creative, and that using and tapping into that is not a matter of right or wrong, but how do you feel? What do you have to say that's important? A hung down head began to liven up to the point to where he had been stimulated so much, I had to kind of make him my unofficial assistant in the class. The other piece I want to share too, you mentioned something about the senior citizens. Years ago, the Alzheimer's Association did a program called Memories in the Making, because what they were noticing in cases of dementia where some of the short-term memory was leaving, they were actually using painting and creating art to capture the memories of the senior citizens. So a senior may have come in who was experiencing dementia or Alzheimer's, right? And created a piece that had a memory from years ago, where they might have forgotten that they had done that piece. And when you reminded them, they could actually go back in the piece and pull their memories out. So I just think there's so many untapped areas of therapy, of finding one's voice. And I have to go back to bridge building that the arts can tap into and connect with.
Yeah, to add to that, I'll tell you, there was just a class out that you can get a certificate, and we have one of our younger artists who's really doing well. She was shot 7 times. She lived through it. She actually helped design the A, and she's going to be part of the Avondale piece on gun violence. And I reached out to her and say, hey, there's this class about art and therapy and teaching, and I'm saying we're going to sponsor you to go through it because we really think it's necessary, and it helps the artists actually find what they need as well. But that's just one of the other things that Black Art Speaks is doing. We're trying to find a way to actually support people on their journey, no matter what it is. So I think it's therapeutic for even artists and people who aren't artists like me.
And James, I'm going to give them a little plug. You know, when you're Annie Roof, James does some programming at New Prospect Church in the Senior Center currently. And Annie Roof is up on the top floor, 2 doors down from the space that we're looking to get into and use. So that might be an opportunity next time you're on site with your program to pop up on the top floor and see if there's some joint stuff you can do. Because James, Annie Roof works with youth all the way through seniors.
Yeah.
So he works with everybody. So.
Perfect. Yes. You know, the great thing, I think one of the, and I'm going to connect it too, a lot of times people are missing out on the great arts integration that occurs within our school system. There are many artists out there, and myself included, that are called teaching artists, where we're professional artists who have the ability to incorporate what we're doing into the curriculum and showing how to connect math and visual art, or math and literary art. And so I'd love to connect with you, James. Just, you know, if I'm not there, leave me a note under the door, and the studio is there. I have to give a shout out plug to New Prospect, because ever since they've been in that building, they said, we know art is important, and have just provided that outlet for me to share art with the community, from workshops with seniors, even with the Dolores Bland Senior Center, as well as youth too. So looking forward to connecting with you, James.
Absolutely. I'll be there on Thursday the 1st, and then every Monday for 5 weeks doing a diabetes education program. So we got you. We connect.
And then Dr. Muff, he put in the chat that this discussion is great, and thank you for basically sharing your journey. So I just wanted to put that out there. Also, James, down the street, when they were talking about the community of Roseland, James lives in Dayton, so he commutes down to Cincinnati.
The Gem City. I'm from Dayton, James, so I don't get to hear, yeah.
And so the letter R that Annie Ruth was talking about is actually, on our way when we go to lunch at Yummy Express, is the lot right next door. So that empty lot. So that will be a very good visual point, because that's on Reading Road, which is State Route 42 once you get out of Cincinnati, right? So it's one of the most highly trafficked areas as far as foot traffic, as well as vehicle traffic, and buses, everything. Main bus lines go through there 24 hours. So that is a very good spot to have that and drive those conversations. And whenever you see a community being revitalized, or just major attention to it from local government, what spearheads that is the creative placemaking of art. You have art galleries, you have art education, all those kind of things. So, it's very critical, because that's in the center of Cincinnati. So I just wanted to point out.
I'm gonna plug something for you too. You all are at a very historic location, because even with the renovations of getting New Prospect ready as a community hub, there is about maybe 5 years ago, Cedric Cox and I teamed up when they did the major cleanup at New Prospect. So if you all go outside and look heading down towards the campgrounds at New Prospect, that is actually a joint mural that was facilitated by myself and Cedric Cox, and also community members that we completed that in one day. So it's still standing strong, still colorful, right there on that wall, if you want to get a sense of just what community connectivity and art looks like. That's so you'll see, if you look at the piece, you'll see some Cedric Cox styles with the nice right angles and geometric shapes infused in there. And then you'll see some of the Afrocentric styles that my work incorporates. But it was actually completed by the entire community. About probably 100 volunteers ensured that particular mural was done too. So you don't have to go far.
Yeah, and Cedric is an African-American abstract artist. He's been in that space. I actually have some of his pieces. I actually have some of your pieces too, anyway. So those are just things I want to say. And then Eric also put in the chat that he was second Dr. Musk's comment that this has been powerful. Now we're rounding out our last few minutes. Are there any kind of words of encouragement, words of inspiration, or just overall comments and reflections that the audience would like to give? And then we'll end it with Annie Ruth and Alandes. So I'll start off. I'm going to call you out. I'm going to start off with James. CSU team knows I do this all the time.
I'm good. That was, my question was about, how I can just initiate or introduce art to those that I come in contact with, and see how I can incorporate it into the lessons, as Ms. Annie Ruth was saying. How can I, Annie Ruth, I'm sorry, I said it wrong. See how I can incorporate art into what I teach about health and wellness and lifestyle. So this was good. This was really good for me. Thank you so much.
Eric and Ambrose.
Well, I just wanted to, thank you all for sharing today. It has been, powerful and very interesting in terms of what you're doing. I do have a question though, with respect to, because it goes along with some of the programming we do, with respect to the starting as an LLC and then converting or changing to a nonprofit. So something happened, to sort of encourage you to make that change. Could you speak to that, or in the structure of your operation, the importance of that, because it does relate to the viability and sort of long-term sustainability of such an initiative, and I think it's something that's probably important for folks to learn about.
Right. So I have first of all, we started the LLC knowing that we wanted the nonprofit, but to get a nonprofit takes a lot longer than the LLC. So we have both. I always feel like sometimes nonprofits forget that they need to be in the business of making money so they can support themselves. So we need both, and we use a lot of what we do is through the nonprofit, but we have some RFPs we do as well, et cetera. So we have an accountant that kind of separates the two when we need to. We also ensure that we can use the nonprofit to get grants. So if one of the artists, they don't have a nonprofit, but they really have a great idea, then they can use Black Art Speaks as the fiscal agent, so that they don't miss a chance. So that's what we do and why we've done it. We know that to make any of this work, you need money, and you can't always just pull on people's heart to make things happen. So you actually have to use the business piece to actually support some of what we're doing. So that's
Excellent.
why we do it.
I thank you for that, and I think Amber, this probably would be a way to segue into another session that we can do, because what she's described really is the framework for social enterprise.
Yeah.
And when we did the workshop 2 weeks ago, someone asked that question about social enterprise, and this is a prime example of how that is, what that is in action. So thank you for sharing, and we will be calling on you.
That's great. I love it.
And Dr. Muff, Shoshanda, Miss Brenda, Alexis, and Ray, do you all have any comments or anything you would like to make? Just jump in if you do.
Absolutely, I do. Good afternoon. I appreciate the message, the journey, the information that I received. For me, I've said this before. Art tends to tug at my heart when I see an artist, or what they created, because it's very special, and I know that some effort and some feeling actually went into what they're designing and the way they approached it. So artwork always has a special place in my heart, and the artist that creates those things. So I want to commend you guys for stepping up and giving artists a place, giving them a home and a way to communicate out on social justice and to reach a different height with regards to their message.
Thank you.
And Eric?
I don't think I have anything to add per se, but or a question, but just to appreciate. Really, truly powerful is the word that comes to mind. And you've tapped into something really important and really human, and really powerful. And so I just appreciate that and appreciate you.
Thank
And
you.
Alexis and Annie Ruth, you all can have any
Yeah.
final comments, questions, challenges?
I will say this. Of course, there's challenges because it takes money to do this. So we take donations. If you have a job, call us and we'll talk through how we can make it happen. We'd love that. The second thing I'll tell you is probably last week, I think it was, our organization as a whole won the Dr. King Award for the state of Ohio, and as an organization. And it probably was the most meaningful thing ever for me for this organization. I've been a part of a King Award for personal things, but to actually feel like our organization is screaming social justice at the top of our lungs, but everyone is seeing them like what Dr. King asked us to do it in peace, to do it with love, to do it with commitment. And knowing that we were doing it that way and people saw that, it just floored me. I don't know if Annie Ruth, if you felt the same way, but we were blessed to go to Columbus last week and actually standing there near Dr. King's cousin. I don't know why. That just floored me too. I just was like, don't start crying on the stage. Do not start crying. But that just said that art is powerful and people see the mission of our heart. Annie Ruth?
Yeah, I think what I really want to say is that one thing I love about this collective, and I think it should continue to grow, is the premise of each one reach one, each one teach one. It's like artists from varying backgrounds, we know our roles. Those of us who have done it for years and years, it doesn't do us any good to take all this knowledge, training, and expertise to the grave. It's really important for us to share it with the younger generations and prepare them for the world, for them to go further and do even greater things that we have done. And so that's what I love, is that you have a collective of artists of varying degrees. Like, give you an example, something that might come in for me, I might not need exposure in the grocery store, but a new artist might want to come in and see, well, hey, how do I exhibit my art the right way to get the right kind of momentum for what I'm doing? So Black Art Speaks is always welcoming not only new artists, but artists who have the skill, the expertise, the know-how, and the genuine heart to be able to reach one and continue a legacy of art throughout greater Cincinnati and throughout the world.
And that's called mentorship, sponsorship, and succession planning, right? And those are the key ingredients for legacy, right? So with that, because you all brought it home, this will conclude our January 18th, 2024 edition of CED Office Hour Live, where we talked about the intersection of community development, art, and social justice, a conversation with Black Arts Speak. We thank you for your time. Thank the audience for joining us, and we will see you next week. Same time, same place, online at 2 p.m. Thank you.